He laughed the moment he saw the old security guard shuffling. Little did he know, a secret was waiting in that untouched locker, a secret that would change everything. The morning sun spilled across the glass towers of Halston Enterprises, glinting off polished marble floors, gleaming brass railings, and the array of sleek luxury cars lined up outside the building. The air inside the CEO's office buzzed with the quiet hum of efficiency, assistants shuffling papers, phones ringing and the soft click of heels echoing down the hallways. At the center of it all sat Richard Halston, the CEO himself, a man whose wealth was matched only by the sharpness of his ego. He exuded power with every motion. The way he leaned back in his leather chair, the way his eyes skimmed over spreadsheets and emails with piercing precision, the subtle smirk he wore whenever someone dared to challenge him. Today, however, his attention wasn't on financial reports or stock charts. It was on the small figure approaching the front desk, Miguel, the old security guard. His uniform was neat but worn, his shoes scuffed from years of standing, and his posture slightly hunched from the decades of hard work. He moved with deliberate care, greeting the receptionist with the faintest nod. Richard couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. To him, Miguel was a relic, a man who belonged to a bygone era, irrelevant in a world dominated by wealth, technology, and speed. The contrast was stark. Richard, towering in his polished suit, exuded authority and charisma. Miguel, humble and unassuming, was almost invisible in the grand scheme of the office's hierarchy. But the audience, already attuned to contrast framing, immediately senses the imbalance. Power versus humility, arrogance versus patience, wealth versus dignity. These differences are not just visual. They set the emotional tone for the entire story. As Miguel continued his rounds, checking security monitors and performing his duties with unwavering diligence, Richard leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. "Still here, old man," he muttered under his breath, audible only to himself. The audience feels the CEO's arrogance, the subtle cruelty in his tone, and the tension begins to build. Every step Miguel took, every key he turned in the lock, was scrutinized, judged, and belittled in Richard's eyes. But Miguel moved with purpose, unaffected outwardly by the ridicule. His life was quiet, disciplined, and governed by principles Richard could never understand. His mind was already on the tasks ahead, ensuring the building was secure, logging visitor entries, and maintaining a sense of calm in a chaotic office environment. This silent dignity, the audience realizes, is the seed of the story's eventual moral arc. Patience, humility, and quiet perseverance will later stand in stark contrast to Richard's arrogance and impulsive judgments. The office staff, watching from their desks, had long learned to tread carefully around both men. They feared Richard's temper and sharp tongue, but they admired Miguel's consistency and dedication. In whispered conversations, they spoke of his loyalty and the stories of how he had kept the office safe, resolved conflicts, and quietly helped colleagues in need, all without recognition or reward. These small glimpses of Miguel's humanity plant the emotional hook for the audience, a character to root for, a man whose worth transcends appearances and position. Richard's impatience finally reached a boiling point when he noticed Miguel taking a moment too long to inspect a visitor's ID. "Hurry up," Richard barked, his voice cutting to the quiet hum of the office. All eyes turned toward the confrontation, a ripple of tension traveling through the room. Miguel, ever composed, offered a polite nod and completed his check without complaint. He did not argue, did not justify himself, and did not allow Richard's mockery to pierce his calm exterior. The audience feels the emotional divide intensify. The CEO's arrogance is jarring, yet the guard's resilience and quiet dignity invite empathy and admiration. As the day progressed, Richard continued to find small faults in Miguel's work, interpreting exhaustion for carelessness, subtle mistakes for incompetence. He called him into his office, towering over the old man with a mixture of scorn and disbelief. "Do you even know what you're doing?" he demanded, his tone dripping with condescension. Miguel responded with measured calm, explaining the procedures he followed, the checks he performed, and the reasons for each action. But Richard's mind was closed. He saw only what he wanted to see, a liability, an inconvenience, a man too old and too slow to matter in the fast-paced world of business. Here, the contrast framing deepens. Richard measures worth in speed, efficiency, and status, Miguel measures worth in duty, loyalty, and integrity. The audience begins to sense that Richard's judgment is flawed, that his understanding of value is superficial, and that the story's eventual emotional payoff will hinge on the revelation of Miguel's hidden depth. Small details, Miguel's worn shoes, the careful way he holds doors open, his unwavering politeness, serve as breadcrumbs, creating anticipation and emotional engagement. Meanwhile, the office itself functions as a microcosm of power dynamics. Assistants hurry to meet deadlines, managers navigate Richard's whims, and the staff subtly sidestep conflicts. Yet in this hierarchy, Miguel stands out not because of authority, but because of moral strength and consistency. This quiet heroism, unnoticed by the world around him, lays the groundwork for the story's central tension. The audience feels curiosity mixed with admiration, wondering what secrets this unassuming man might hold. As the day wound down, a small but crucial moment occurred. Miguel, while performing his routine checks, noticed a minor security issue, a locker that had been untouched for months, sealed and forgotten. He paused, assessing the situation with the calm precision of someone who had seen decades of human behavior unfold within these walls. Richard, observing from his office window, misconstrued the pause as hesitation, carelessness, even defiance. His face tightened with irritation. "I should fire him," he muttered under his breath, unaware of the significance of the locker, unaware of the story silently waiting to unfold. Miguel's calm eyes flicked to the locker as Richard stormed off, unaware that within that silent box lay a truth powerful enough to humble the proudest man in the room. Every laugh in the office echoed like a challenge to his dignity, yet the old guard did not flinch, his eyes calm, his mind steady, unshaken by the arrogance around him. The morning light filtered through the tall office windows, bouncing off polished surfaces and casting long shadows across the bustling floor. Richard Halston, the CEO whose pride rivaled his wealth, had found his amusement for the day. Miguel, the seasoned security guard who moved with careful precision yet drew only scorn from those in power. Richard had been smirking behind his mahogany desk, his eyes following every deliberate movement of the old guard. A misaligned ID, a slight pause, a careful check. To Richard, these were glaring imperfections, a challenge to his sense of order and superiority. "Look at him," Richard muttered to his assistant, voice dripping with mockery. "Does anyone actually rely on him for security?" Around the office, whispers traveled quietly. Employees noticed injustice, yet fear kept them silent. The audience immediately feels the tension. Richard embodies unchecked arrogance, Miguel embodies quiet strength, and viewers begin rooting for the underdog. Miguel continued his routine with unwavering composure. Every action was methodical, checking badges, scanning the premises, noting anomalies. When a visitor's ID required double-checking, Richard's patience snapped. "Hurry up," he barked, his voice slicing through the calm office hum. Yet Miguel, ever disciplined, responded politely. "I am following protocol, sir." His tone carried experience, restraint, and dignity, qualities invisible to Richard but crystal clear to the audience. As Richard's mockery escalated, so did the tension. He pointed out minor flaws, scuffed shoes, wrinkled uniform, or the smallest procedural delay. "You're an embarrassment," he sneered. Miguel's silence was deafening in its strength. He did not argue, did not apologize excessively, and did not allow humiliation to break his composure. The audience now sees a stark contrast: arrogance versus humility, impatience versus patience, wealth versus quiet wisdom. Subtle gestures amplified this effect. Miguel straightened a logbook, held open a door for a rushing colleague, and adjusted a visitor's bag with care. Each act, small on the surface, underscored his professionalism and human decency. Meanwhile, Richard's impatience and superiority were glaring, building the frustration viewers feel. An emotional loop designed to maintain engagement. A brief incident heightened the stakes. A visitor dropped a package near the guard station. Miguel bent carefully to pick it up, ensuring no damage. Richard noticed, his smirk twisting into a scoff. "Even that takes you too long," he muttered. Yet Miguel's calm efficiency remained untouched, a silent defiance that resonated emotionally with the audience. By midday, the mockery had become public. Richard, in the presence of visiting clients, exaggerated Miguel's minor delays, correcting him loudly. "This is what I deal with every day," he proclaimed. The client shifted uncomfortably, aware of the imbalance. Miguel, though under scrutiny, maintained composure, continuing his duties flawlessly. This heightened the contrast, the CEO's pride versus the guard's humility, and engaged the audience further. Around the office, colleagues observed silently, some exchanging glances, their sympathy for Miguel growing. His consistency, his care for detail, and his respect for duty, despite humiliation, started commanding quiet admiration. These reactions reinforced the narrative arc. The audience's emotional alignment shifts increasingly toward Miguel. Toward the late afternoon, Richard's frustration peaked. He muttered to his assistant, "I swear, one day I'll fire him." The audience feels suspense, teetering between curiosity and dread. The narrative hints at the guard's hidden strength in the mysterious locker, a promise of payoff that keeps viewers hooked. Finally, Miguel's eyes fell upon the untouched locker. His hand rested lightly on the lock, a deliberate, calm gesture. Richard, oblivious to its significance, strode away in irritation. The office buzz resumed, but Miguel's quiet moment suggested a story waiting to unfold, a secret that would redefine the office hierarchy and reveal the guard's true worth. Miguel's hand lingered on the locker, calm and steady, while the arrogant CEO retreated, unaware that within that silent, untouched box lay a truth that would challenge every assumption, humble every pride, and forever change the way the office saw him. No one knew the man who checked the IDs daily had a life that held more courage than the entire office combined. Miguel returned home that evening with the same calm precision that defined his life at the office. The streets were alive with the hum of the city. Taxis honking, street vendors calling out, and the faint chatter of neighbors echoing through narrow alleys. To anyone passing by, he appeared ordinary, almost invisible, an older man, dressed neatly but plainly, carrying the weight of a long day in his tired shoulders. Yet behind those tired eyes was a history unknown to anyone at Halston Enterprises, a life shaped by sacrifice, resilience, and quiet heroism. Inside his modest apartment, Miguel moved with methodical care, preparing a simple dinner. The kitchen was unassuming. A small stove, a few utensils neatly arranged, and a modest table by the window where he often reflected on the day. Unlike the opulence of the office he guarded, his home bore the marks of frugality, not neglect. Every item had purpose, every object carefully maintained, much like the way he maintained the security of the company he served without recognition. The audience begins to feel empathy and respect, realizing that this unassuming man holds a dignity the wealthy CEO cannot comprehend. Miguel's life was not defined by material wealth. His son had moved to another city years ago, pursuing opportunities he could never provide. His wife had passed, leaving him alone but not broken. Every morning, Miguel carried not only the weight of his work, but also the memory of his loved ones, the unspoken promise to remain steadfast, and the quiet determination to live with integrity. Contrast framing is crucial here. While Richard's life overflowed with luxury, Miguel's world was one of struggle, care, and loyalty, a life the audience grows to admire deeply. As he prepared his modest meal, he noticed a locker key in his pocket, worn from years of handling. That key was more than a simple tool. It represented decades of trust, unspoken responsibility, and secrets that no one else had ever been entrusted with. Miguel reflected on the time he had joined Halston Enterprises, a young man eager but humble, learning the ropes under a long line of predecessors. Over the years, he had witnessed countless managers come and go, executives rise and fall, and the subtle changes of power dynamics within the office. Yet through it all, Miguel remained a constant, a quiet guardian whose presence had saved the company from small disasters more times than anyone could count. He sat down at the small table, and for the first time in the evening, allowed himself a deep breath. Memories surfaced. A fire in the office basement years ago, a forgotten package that could have triggered legal chaos, a visitor who tried to sneak sensitive documents. Each situation had been resolved with precision, discretion, and humility. Miguel had never sought recognition. The audience feels admiration grow with every anecdote, understanding that his life's work had been about protecting others, not himself. Yet, beyond professional, Miguel's personal sacrifices were profound. He had declined promotions that would have taken him away from the role he loved, choosing duty over ambition. His modest savings were dedicated to helping his son, ensuring education and a better life, even if it meant skipping comforts for himself. Contrast framing again. The CEO's indulgence in luxury, impatience, and arrogance stands in stark opposition to Miguel's quiet sacrifices and selflessness. The audience emotionally aligns with the guard, building a deep investment in his story. Miguel's eyes fell upon the old photographs hanging on the wall, faded images of family gatherings, birthdays, and long-forgotten celebrations. They were reminders of a life full of love and loss, of joy and hardship. He traced a finger over the frame of his wife's smiling face, whispering softly a name only he knew. In these moments, the audience senses the humanity of a man who is more than the uniform he wears, more than the daily mockery he endures at the office. This deep emotional connection ensures that when the climax arrives, viewers will feel the full impact of his revelation. As night deepened, Miguel prepared for the next day. Every item, uniform, keys, logbook, was arranged meticulously, each motion a reflection of his disciplined life. But his mind wandered to the locker. For decades, it had held documents and objects deemed trivial or forgotten by others. Yet each item carried immense significance. Contracts, financial records, personal notes, and reminders of those who had worked at the company before him. The audience begins to sense the weight of the upcoming revelation. This ordinary man is a custodian of extraordinary secrets, a moral and ethical anchor for the entire enterprise. Even in solitude, Miguel's life was full of small acts of kindness. He had a neighbor, a young single mother struggling to make ends meet, whom he helped discreetly. Groceries delivered anonymously, bills quietly paid, advice offered with a smile. Contrast framing deepens again, humility and generosity versus arrogance and indifference seen in the office. The audience's respect and emotional investment in Miguel grow with each example. The next morning arrived, sunlight spilling across the modest apartment. Miguel prepared to leave, checking his keys and wallet, ensuring his uniform was neat. The weight of responsibility rested lightly on his shoulders, a combination of duty, honor, and integrity that had been nurtured over decades. As he stepped out, he paused for a moment, glancing at the locker key once more. This small gesture foreshadows a pivotal moment in the coming sections. Arriving at Halston Enterprises, Miguel entered with the same calm resolve, aware that today might test him differently than ever before. Richard's mockery from the previous day lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the arrogance he faced daily. But Miguel's mind was steady, prepared for the small yet crucial acts that would define his character to the audience. Every eye in the office was on him now. Subtle curiosity about whether this quiet man might reveal the depth of his hidden life. As he reached the guard station, Miguel's hand rested lightly on the locker, the worn surface smooth beneath his fingers. The key in his pocket seemed to hum with possibility. The audience feels tension rise. The ordinary man, mocked and underestimated, holds the power to shift the narrative completely. This scene establishes suspense, emotional connection, and foreshadowing for the critical revelation that will follow in sections 4 and 5. Miguel straightened, glanced around the office, and took a deep breath. Every small detail of his uniform, every log entry, every courteous nod to staff and visitors built anticipation for what was about to unfold. His humility, experience, and dedication contrasted sharply with the prideful arrogance of the CEO and the oblivious office staff. The audience senses at this moment is a calm before the storm. The story is poised to move into a turning point that will test every assumption about value, power, and recognition. Miguel's eyes lingered on the locker, calm and unwavering, while the bustling office carried on oblivious to the truth waiting silently within, a truth that would soon humble the proudest men in the room and reveal the extraordinary life of the man they all overlooked. No one expected the quietest man in the office to be the one who would change the course of everyone's day, until the moment the locker revealed its long-hidden secret. The office was buzzing with the usual energy, phones ringing, assistants scurrying, and the faint hum of computers filling every corner. Richard Halston, the CEO, was pacing impatiently, his mind still sharp with yesterday's amusement over Miguel, the old security guard. To Richard, the man's calm demeanor had become a source of irritation. A reminder that no matter how much authority he wielded, Miguel seemed untouchable, unflappable, and completely indifferent to his mockery. Miguel, however, moved with the same precision as always. Each step, each gesture, carried decades of experience. Today, something stirred in him, a sense that the moment for revelation had finally arrived. His hand brushed against the locker, lightly at first, as if testing the air around it. The audience already feels the tension building. This is no ordinary locker, and Miguel is no ordinary guard. Richard noticed Miguel's lingering gaze and raised an eyebrow, a smirk forming. "What are you staring at, old man?" he sneered, striding over with the confidence of someone used to being the center of attention. The office seemed to pause, staff watching with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The contrast is immediate. The arrogant CEO versus the calm, patient, and experienced guard. The audience is drawn in, sensing that this encounter will ignite a turning point. Miguel's hand rested firmly on the lock. He drew the key from his pocket, its worn surface glinting under the office lights. Every detail, the quiet click of the key turning, the gentle twist of the lock, felt amplified in the tense silence. Richard leaned closer, curiosity mixed with derision, confident that nothing remarkable would come from the action. "Go on, open it," he said, almost laughing. "Let's see what's inside your little treasure box." As the locker swung open, a wave of astonishment rippled through the office. Inside were documents, ledgers, and files that detailed decades of meticulous record-keeping. Contracts that had been forgotten, notes that preserved the integrity of the company, and critical information that could have caused chaos if misplaced. Miguel had maintained them all quietly, without recognition or reward. The audience experiences a rush of suspense and awe. The underdog's quiet life now holds power far beyond anyone's expectation. Richard's smirk faltered. His eyes scanned the contents, disbelief etching across his face. How did you?" he stammered, struggling to reconcile the image of the humble guard he had mocked with the man who held the company's history, its secrets, and its security in his hands. The emotional contrast is sharp. Arrogance meets humility. Pride meets integrity. Ignorance meets wisdom. The audience feels a mix of vindication from Miguel and shock at Richard's sudden realization. Staff around them whispered, their eyes wide. The office hierarchy, once defined by wealth, status, and fear, was quietly shifting. The guard, always overlooked, now commanded the attention and respect of everyone present. Every gesture Miguel made, calm, measured, and deliberate, amplified the contrast. He had silently carried a responsibility far greater than anyone could imagine, while Richard's impatience and arrogance had blinded him to the truth. Miguel began to explain, his voice steady, recounting the decades of safeguarding the office's critical information, resolving minor crises, and maintaining order behind the scenes. Each revelation was met with growing awe from the audience within the story, and simultaneously, from the viewers listening to the narration. The emotional tension reached its peak as Richard struggled to process the truth. The man he had ridiculed, mocked, and almost fired was, in fact, the backbone of the enterprise. As Miguel continued, he described a past incident, a forgotten financial discrepancy that could have ruined the company if not for his diligence, an urgent matter quietly resolved without recognition. He spoke of his sacrifices, the long hours, and the loyalty that had defined his life. Richard's pride began to crumble, a mix of guilt, astonishment, and respect flickering across his features. The audience feels a powerful emotional catharsis. The arrogant must reckon with the overlooked, and the humble are revealed as quietly heroic. The office was silent now, every person processing the revelation. Colleagues exchanged glances, some nodding in respect, others wiping the astonishment from their faces. Miguel, standing tall despite his age, embodied patience, humility, and endurance. Richard's earlier derision seemed petty, his laughter hollow, and the balance of power subtly but irreversibly shifted. The audience is fully invested, having traveled from ridicule and tension to revelation and emotional triumph. Richard finally spoke, voice low and tentative. I never realized." His words trailed off, the enormity of Miguel's hidden life and contribution sinking in. The CEO, who had once mocked, now faced the undeniable truth. True value is measured not by arrogance, status, or appearances, but by integrity, loyalty, and quiet resilience. Contrast framing here is cinematic, emotionally striking, and satisfying. Exactly what keeps viewers engaged and connected to the story. Miguel, ever humble, did not gloat. He simply nodded, acknowledging the unspoken respect that now surrounded him. His life, once unnoticed, was finally seen, appreciated, and understood. The audience experiences a surge of satisfaction and emotional release. The underdog is vindicated, the arrogant humbled, and the moral arc of the story strengthened. The locker incident also revealed a subtle shift in office dynamics. Colleagues began to approach Miguel with newfound respect, asking questions, seeking advice, and acknowledging his decades of dedication. Richard's demeanor had changed, not completely humbled yet, but shaken, aware that his judgment had been flawed. The audience senses anticipation. The journey toward redemption and reconciliation is now underway, paving the way for the emotional climax in Section 5. Miguel's hand rested lightly on the locker one last time before he closed it, a symbolic gesture of control, responsibility, and quiet authority. The office, once dominated by fear and hierarchy, had experienced a subtle yet profound transformation. The audience feels the suspense ease into emotional resonance. Humility, patience, and loyalty have been revealed as the true measures of greatness, a lesson that echoes beyond the office walls. Miguel stepped back from the locker, calm and unwavering, while the office buzzed with awe and disbelief. The quiet guard had rewritten the rules of power, humility, and respect in a single, unforgettable moment.